Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective. And then there were two. So we have Alabama. They handled their business as we expected Bama to do so against Notre Dame, the Rose Bowl. But Clemson, Ohio State getting redemption from last year and defeating Clemson handily 49-28 and advancing to the national championship game. So now we have Alabama versus Ohio State. And I know there was so much discussion about whether or not Ohio State deserved to make the college football playoff. We're going to talk about that here and more. First, make sure you hit that like button, show us some love. I'm on the road, so sorry for the headset and whatnot, but want to make sure we get this out. And as we go into Heisman week and national championship week, and continue our prep towards the end of the college football season, we're just very, very thankful for the growth we've had on this channel. I have a blast watching these games, making these videos, and speaking with all of you. So I'll actually start off here just, big picture in terms of this is why we have a playoff. And, in this year in particular, I know I had been on this channel and this is something that was a reminder for me as well. I was open in terms of tweeting, live chats, conversations y'all saw with Tran, where I was like, man, this is one year where I would have been okay with the BCS. I would have been okay with fast forwarding right to Alabama Clemson. Well, in the words of the great Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. You know, Alabama, I do believe there is a gap, a talent gap, a recruiting gap. A lot of people across the landscape have talked a lot about that. Is the lack of playoff expansion a reason behind that? Is that something that could kind of help spread talent out, at least across the Power Five conferences? We see, speaking of Power Five, we see Cincinnati get their opportunity to play at Georgia in the Peach Bowl and almost come through. They kind of blow it at the end, but anybody that watched that game, man for man, physicality, talent wise, there wasn't really much of a gap, if any at all. And they were probably the better team, but Georgia pulls it out. Well, we say that because it's like, even in a 8-team model, Cincinnati would have gotten an opportunity. So even from the G5, but going to 4 teams, all right, we have Alabama and Clemson, who we know are really, really good and also really, really deserving. And then we have all this controversy over 3 other teams between Notre Dame. It came down to 3 teams: Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Texas A&M. And then, but Ohio State, and this is how I felt from jump and why when I did my rankings, even though I did include Texas A&M in, the team I pulled was Notre Dame. Um, instead of Ohio State. Because at the end of the day, the goal of the committee that has been stated to us is we must select who are the 4 best teams in all of college football, not necessarily the 4 most deserving teams. To me, 4 best and 4 deserving are 2 different things or 2 different arguments. And yes, a big chunk of that is eye test. And I that's why I was like, I know Ohio State only played 6 games. I know, they didn't even get through the Big Ten season. We have COVID. We have all these variables and factors. But when I sit down and look at Ohio State, there's no way I can sit here and say that they weren't one of the 4 best teams. You know, now if they had lost to somebody or somebody had given them an L, that's a completely different scenario story. But when you're looking at what Ryan Day's product is, I never felt that Notre Dame or Texas A&M would be favored or beat them in a game. So I thought, did I think Clemson was better than Ohio State? Sure. But I knew Ohio State could compete with Clemson and give them, I thought it was going to be a close game just because, what we saw last year and the type of team that both of these squads are, even coming in, considering last year's game, where the gap came in, I think, last night, and when we factor in this particular matchup of Clemson Ohio State, and we move past some of those things, just in general, that's why this matchup happens the way it does. But when you mix in neutral site, and when you start to mix in Dabo Sweeney's mouth and just the overall redemption story for Clemson, they showed it a ton during the game of, whatever the score was, 28-23 or 29-23 from last year, and how they lost, and getting the kids motivated. Dabo puts more in the fire of how he votes, which is when he's talking about the deserving aspect, and he's saying I'm putting them 11th or I'm putting them 12th because they played half a season. I don't think it's fair. I don't think they deserve this. He's not wrong, but you are, and whether you believe in locker room motivation or anything like that, you are fueling them. And that's exactly what we saw. We saw a very, very focused Ohio State team. We saw a quarterback in Justin Fields who showed us the entire package, including toughness, because he takes an unbelievable shot to the ribs. A lot of it his doing because he's out there in the open field scrambling, doesn't go down. I know it's a third down. He's trying to make a play. And, Clemson linebacker nails him right in the ribs. We have the targeting rule that by law, absolutely, crown and helmet, get it. We've got to have some sort of, and I saw Joel Klatt tweet about this last night, completely agree. We have to have some modifications to the rules to where people aren't necessarily getting ejected. You have the penalty in place, but there needs to be, more levels of discernment on how we assess those type of penalties to eject someone from a football game. I don't understand why the NFL has what they have, and they're not kicking people out left and right and to a higher level of football and whatnot, and we can't have something that better mimics that in college football, because the penalties are just so severe, and it is a bang bang instance, especially when somebody's running at you, and I think they have to have more input from people that have played, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and understanding of, okay, where's that line between safety, keeping, making sure our game is intact and we're not losing people to head and neck injuries. I get the concerns, but also making sure that, we're not just kicking everybody out left and right the moment anything happens in a bang bang instance. But Justin Fields suffered the brunt of that in terms of, having to come out the game. Very, very similar to Trevor Lawrence and the Shaun Wade hit last year. And he comes back for Clemson last year and balls. And this time, Justin Field comes back in the game, throws a touchdown, extending the lead, extending the lead, extending the lead. And they get out to this big lead at halftime, and they roll. And it was impressive to watch because there were so many doubters. People talking about Zach Wilson from BYU has passed Justin Fields on the NFL draft boards. People talking about, Justin Fields' lack of experience. Then you couple that with what's going on with Dwayne Haskins this year, Ohio State quarterbacks, are they good? All these talking points. And the brother looked so focused, poised, and showed extreme arm talent. The throw to Olave where he hits him full stride, it's a 60-yard dime in the air from launch point, 6 touchdown performance. He made himself some money last night, in my opinion. He showed everything you want to see from a high-level NFL quarterback, somebody that you would like to develop in terms of those traits. And then you jump over to the Ohio State defense going against one of the all-time college football quarterbacks in Trevor Lawrence. And they exposed a lot of Clemson's flaws. Clemson's flaws on both sides of the ball got exposed. So Clemson offensively, we know that they've had some issues running the football at certain times this year. We talk a lot about Travis Etienne, but up front, Clemson has struggled. And they got manhandled last night from a run game perspective. Too many negative plays. And you have to give all that credit to Ohio State's defense, especially situational defense, and making Clemson play one-dimensional football. You're not going to slow down Clemson's pass game, but Clemson is also, like Alabama, built on balance, built on, hey, I can beat you with Trevor Lawrence and Amari Rodgers in the air, or I can also beat you with Travis Etienne and even Trevor Lawrence's legs and mixing in all of the zone read stuff. But when I take all that away, and tons of credit to Ohio State for taking all that away, and now we play pass, yeah, we'll give something up, but we're going to generate negative plays. We'll be able to generate some sacks when you can't get to your play action, and really take Travis Etienne out of the game. Now, he was still able to contribute a little bit and throw game, but that's not what makes Clemson special. And even going back to when they've had guys like Deshaun Watson, I know Clemson fans are going to jump on here and be like, hey, Tony Elliott had COVID and didn't have the offensive coordinator, Steve. That has to have some weight of impact on the outcome of this game, especially considering how much people love Tony Elliott and where, what he at some point is going to be a head coach. Valid, valid, valid. However, when you have Trevor Lawrence out there, kids out there, you know, no one expected Ohio State to shut it down the way that they did, and they did it. So you have to give them credit. I think they held them to, I think under 3 yards per carry in the run game. So fantastic job. Speaking of exposed, Brent Venables, and I saw the huddle at the end that he had with the defense, which was kind of like the band playing on the Titanic when the sink was shipping. It was sad and beautiful at the same time because I have been very, very open about my concerns with Clemson's defense until I saw what they did against Notre Dame in the ACC championship game. I thought they had gotten things right. Really, kind of since Trevor Lawrence came back, they knuckled down after they had already gotten exposed in the first half of the Boston College game when DJ played. Then they really, really got exposed in the loss at South Bend to Notre Dame, which was a problem defensively. And I just heaped a lot of praise on Justin Fields just now. But for them to be giving up massive, massive chunk plays over top and also conceding all of the run game stuff to Trey Sermon, you're not even giving Trevor Lawrence a chance. Brent Venables and Clemson defense. And that was a bad performance. And I think Howie Kendrick is going to be a very, very good a very, very good corner for Clemson at some point. But the whole Olave and even Garrett Wilson at one point, I mean, he was just getting picked on. And I know he converted over from Darren Kendrick. I apologize. I know he converted over from wide receiver to corner, and this is still kind of year 2 of that. But it exposed. And Brent Venables, they're gonna have to go back to the drawing board in the offseason and say, hey, when we get in these situations, we have to play our normal standard of Clemson defense. We can't because the evidence and the proof was there this year. A lot of us ignored it, especially in this scenario because Ohio State potentially being at a disadvantage. Shout out to college football nerds for pointing that out of, hey, they're still kind of in the middle of the season. So could there be a disadvantage? People talking about the fresh legs and them only playing 6 games, not as much wear and tear, but they also haven't had all of the reps and gone through the battles that make you tougher and stronger throughout a season the way that Clemson and the other teams had. So give and take, Ohio State was just a flat out better team last night. Flat out better team. And that's why I didn't feel bad putting them in the playoffs. Now, I would have, if you wanted to punish them and factor in deserving, maybe I'd throw them in at 4 instead of bumping them up to 3. But when they perform the way that they did, it's deserved. And there's not much else you can argue with there. As for the Alabama Notre Dame game, all that kind of went down as expected, 31-14. Alabama cruises pretty comfortably. I thought Notre Dame did as much as they could do from a standpoint of game plan. I thought they got a little conservative early. There was one bizarre quarterback power call on 3rd and 7 when it's like, Brian Kelly, I get it. You're undermanned, but you got to try something. But outside of that, I mean, Notre Dame has an amazing offensive line. A lot of those kids are going to be starting a long time in the NFL. Um, they've Ian Book is the classic try hard, undersized college quarterback. But when you're going up against a very, very good Alabama defense and an all-time Alabama offense, I mean, the result is what it is. Devontae Smith confirmed what I already knew about him being the Heisman Trophy winner. I expect him to win on Tuesday. We'll see how it plays out. If they decide that it's still a quarterback award, or if they're actually going to validate who the best player in college football has been all season. It was a no-brainer after he took over for Jalen Waddle, and what he did this year was a no-brainer for me. So, but we also look at Mac Jones, his development, and taking over for Tua. He is the perfect Nick Saban type quarterback. He's the perfect Nick Saban trigger man because he's got that blend of the solid game manager. When you look at Coker and AJ McCarron and the type of guys, Greg McElroy that Nick Saban has won with, but he also is still more aggressive and can really push the ball down the field and make things happen on the defense that we saw from Jalen Hurts and Tua. So Mac Jones is perfect for what they want to do and what Sark does. And then you mix in a Najee Harris, who seems to be a blend of almost every Alabama running back we've seen over the last decade. And that offense is so difficult to stop and so difficult to contain. But it makes for a very interesting matchup now in the national championship game against Ohio State. And that's where I'll kind of end here. I mean, Justin Fields, if there's ever a quarterback that can give Alabama problems, and Alabama's defense is very good. They're not great. They're not the traditional great Alabama defense. There is opportunities for Ohio State and Ryan Day, Justin Fields to expose Alabama. And we know the dual threat quarterback aspect is always in play to give Nick Saban problems. Justin Fields combining that with extreme arm talent and playing at a higher level, kind of getting that big game, those big game downs, that big game monkey off of his back. Now we get to see what he does against Dylan Moses, Patrick Surtain II. There's some really, really good high level matchups in this game. The way Trey Sermon's been running the ball, he looks like a completely different person running the football since he's transferred from OU. So very, very interesting matchups. Alabama's still probably going to be a very, very comfortable favorite, but there's some matchup advantages that I think Ohio State can take it, can really benefit from when they play in this game. And we've seen Alabama's defense struggle against Florida and Ole Miss this year, and Ohio State does have the personnel and that requisite balance, if you will, even more so than Florida had for sure, to give Alabama some fits. The question I have ultimately is, how do you slow down the Alabama offense? How? Even with as well and locked in as Ohio State's defense was against Trevor Lawrence, Alabama's as balanced as anybody in the country. So how do you create those negative plays? Can you get the opportunities to turn over Mac Jones, who's taken such great care of the football all season? These are questions that will be asked all week heading into this game, but I can't wait. Alabama, Ohio State will be our national championship. I think it is, again, going back to the beginning of the video, that's why we have the playoff. That's why we have the playoff. Guys, for those of you who follow our Texas content, I will have a video today about Texas basketball after the big game today against Kansas. We'll have a video after the Heisman ceremony, and we'll have a video with Tran previewing the national championship game where we go into more depth. But I appreciate everybody that watched this video. Make sure you hit that like button. Little playoff recap for everybody that watched the games last night and just enjoys college football as much as I do. I appreciate you guys. It's been, a blast all year. Hopefully everybody had a safe and happy New Year's. Happy 2021. We'll be back. Peace.